there yet. Okay, all set.
Thank you, Barb. Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order for the regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting, December 14th, 2020. We'll begin with our recitation of our vision statement, where every school will be a thriving school that prepares every student to graduate from high school, college, career, and community ready. We will begin our board meeting with great sadness in reference to the loss of one of our students, Isaí Morocho, and it is a moment of silence. I will read it in Spanish and then read it in English after that, and then we'll go into the moment of silence. Un minuto de silencio en memoria de Isaí Morocho. Nos gustaría pedir un minuto de silencio esta noche para que nuestro distrito reconozca el fallecimiento de Isaí Morocho. Isaí tenía una actitud cariñosa y muy emotiva sobre la vida. E hizo que todos a su alrededor se emocionaran al ver lo que iba a hacer con la suya. Era conocido por su empatía, humor y mucho más. Era un gran amigo y miembro de la familia, siempre exhibiendo una sonrisa. Mientras crecía, Isaí asistió a la escuela primaria Mendota, la escuela intermedia Blackhawk y estaba en tercer año en la preparatoria Madison East. Participó en nuestras comunidades escolares de muchas maneras. Era un estudiante excelente que disfrutaba de teatro y había hablado de convertirse en chef y montar su propio negocio. El fallecimiento de Isaí ha tenido un impacto significativo en una gran cantidad de estudiantes y miembros de personal en todo el distrito. Y esta noche lo recordamos. Únanse a mí para participar en un minuto de silencio en honor a Isaí. Gracias. We would like to ask for a moment of silence this evening for our district to recognize the passing of Isaí Morocho. Isaí had the most caring and excited attitude about life, and he made everyone around him excited to see what he was going to do with his. He was known for his empathy, humor, and so much more. He was a great friend and family member with a ready smile. Growing up, Isaí attended Mendota Elementary School, Blackhawk Middle School, and was a junior at Madison East High School. He was engaged in our school communities in so many ways. He was an excellent student who enjoyed theater and had talked about becoming a chef and owning his own business. Isaí's passing has taken a significant toll on so many students and staff across MMSD, and we remember him tonight. Please join me in participating in a moment of silence in honor of Isaí. Thank you. Thank you all for that. It's really difficult to lose. It's always difficult to lose and lose a child and read a moment of silence at these board meetings. Very important to recognize our loss. This was our student who lost his life due to COVID. Hopefully our first and only student that we have to experience this tragedy and loss. So thank you. Next is public input, written registration. We have a summary here. We've received 111 written statements. They were submitted from noon, Friday, December 11th until 3 p.m. on Monday, December 14th. There were 49 in support of keeping schools virtual for third quarter and in support of a full 1.81% cost of living adjustment effective July 1st, 2020. There were 41 in support of keeping schools virtual for third quarter, 2 in support of in-person learning for third quarter, 17 in support of the district committing to paying cost of living increases every year to ensure that salaries keep up with inflation. And there were 2 in support of new ideas of coming back to school and in an honest and open process for making the decisions. Thank you for those written registrations. We will then move into public appearances. And just to note that public experience registration opens. All registrations will have 3 minutes to provide their oral statement. And somebody is at my door. So why don't we go ahead and start with public comment. Barb, can you let them in? And I gotta go get the door.
Thank you. Our first speaker is Amira Prati. Amira, are you? She must have had to go out and back in. I'm trying to let her back in. One moment.
Okay.
There we go.
Hello, I'm sorry, my Zoom was acting up.
Hi, Amira.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Go ahead and get started when you're ready.
Thank you for having me. Hello, my name is Amira Prati. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I am a junior at Memorial High School. I am currently taking AP US History and am horrified by our textbook, Out of Many, A History of the American People. It is rooted in white supremacist ideology, analyzes history through a colonizing lens, and is, quite simply, thoroughly offensive. Firstly, the textbook uses racial slurs for Native people as well as biracial and multiracial people. The text uses these terms nonchalantly without any regard for the historical trauma these words convey. For instance, it uses the former name for the Washington football team on page 5, even though it has origins in the practice of white colonizers murdering Native people for profit and cutting swaths of skin off the body as proof of the murder. The uses of this terminology teaches students that they are appropriate and respectful. Students who use these terms could trigger someone who has been called this word in a derogatory manner or who has secondary or tertiary trauma from any number of historical and current events. Next, the version of history presented by the textbook is whitewashed, Eurocentric, transphobic, homophobic, sexist, and thoroughly colonized. One example is how the textbook rewrites Native cultures to better align with European culture or societal standards. The textbook maintains that Native cultures only have 2 genders, whereas the majority of tribes have more than 2 genders, and some have as many as 6. As these valued members of Native societies were in direct opposition to many colonizers' religions, Two-Spirit people were targeted and murdered, and subsequently erased from history. However, history cannot be rewritten to fit the whims of colonizers. Finally, the textbook erases the trauma of numerous historically marginalized communities. Possibly the most horrific sections of the book are in the enslavement of Black and Native people, which the textbook also calls employment on page 80. A direct quote from page 87 states, "Humane slave masters, like George Washington, did not wish to be harsh." Later, the textbook says some enslavers were, quote, "generous and benevolent" on page 245, and called the rape of enslaved people, quote, "intimate relationships" on page 247. It should not It should not have to be stated that no part of the enslavement of Black people was humane, generous, or benevolent. The textbook downplays the torture, rape, murder, and whole-scale dehumanization of enslaved people, then goes on to excuse the people who enacted this violence. The impacts of enslavement have shaped and will continue to shape the rest of history. Anti-Black and anti-Native racism are ingrained into American society, but this textbook does not simply ignore this hatred, but actively works to uphold it. No student at MMSD can be the best community member if they do not understand the oppression their neighbor faces and how to be an accomplice in their neighbor's liberation. Certainly, that individual cannot be their best selves if they are perpetuating those forms of racism and bigotry against their neighbor. MMSD cannot achieve its goal of anti-racist education if its textbooks are teaching racism. The same applies for every historically marginalized community that has been mischaracterized or erased from this twisted version of history. Please invest in new APUSH textbooks because the bigotry we learn will impact the world around us for the rest of our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Amira.
Thank you, Amira. Our next speaker is Aiden Drysdale. Aiden, whenever you're ready, if you could start your audio and video.
I do not see him.
Aiden, we're ready. Can you start? There you are. Thank
Sorry
you.
about that. Didn't hear my name the first time. Yeah, my name is Aiden Drysdale. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm a junior at Memorial High School. Today, I'd also like to discuss why it's imperative that the district make it a priority to rethink how history is taught and get rid of racist textbooks. According to my AP US history, as Amira said, out of many a history of the American people, humane slave masters like George Washington did not wish to be harsh. Now, I believe that everyone on this board recognizes why that line is terrible. The idea that a system of oppression may have humane forms is an oxymoron. However, the problem extends far more than just one line. For example, the textbook also suggests that some slaves had it well off and portrays Native Americans as assailants against colonizers. In doing so, the textbook causes students to internalize inaccurate and racist perceptions of history. In addition, the textbook does not bring to center the important voices and stories of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Our society tells history through the frame of the cis white man, and this textbook perpetuates that very narrow and flawed focus. From the research I've done on the politics of textbook publishing, I've learned that much of the information in textbooks is guided by markets that seek to appeal to both heavily conservative and moderately liberal school districts. Consequently, textbooks mainly focus on white figures, erasing this history of cultural complexity and community bonds belonging to Black people and other marginalized communities. According to an article in The Atlantic, schools rob Black children of the opportunity to learn about their own culture, but only indirectly telling stories of Black and Native communities, mostly when white people are involved. Our history textbook, and through this textbook, MMSD is continuing that trend. Students, particularly students of color and of the LGBTQ+ community, should be able to see themselves reflected in the material our district provides them, and this book utterly fails at that goal. In many classrooms, textbooks are treated as if they're purely factual and impartial. Aside from facts, as journalist Francis Fitzgerald points out, the most memorable aspect of a textbook is the tone and rhetoric that the author employs. For example, our textbook often plays down the oppressive force of slavery, making the institution sound much less harsh than it was. At one point, the text refers to it as a form of employment. I'm thankful to have a teacher who recognizes the bias within our textbook and actively works to incorporate different viewpoints. However, the reality is that it isn't appropriate for the district to be providing colonial and racist materials to students. Ideally, history in this district would be taught less through textbooks and more through historiography, which is the idea of having students analyze essays and primary sources rather than traditional textbooks. I urge the school board, particularly the instruction work group, to make an absolute priority to reevaluate textbooks across the district and provide funding to replace them with better instructional materials. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Aiden.
Our next speaker is Marcia Campbell.
Hi, Marcia. You can go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Marcia Campbell. I'm the Executive Director of Rooted, and I am here in support of Agenda Item 14.2, the purchase of 501 East Badger Road. And I just want to say that this is the culmination of many months of work on the part of district staff and of Rooted board and staff. And we are thrilled to be at this point and very excited to be moving forward in partnership on behalf of the residents of the Badger Rock neighborhood and area. And so I'm just here to say how delighted I am that we have reached this day.
Great, thank you, Marcia.
Our next speaker is Anna Stephens. Hello, Anna. Whenever you're ready. Perfect.
Hi, Anna.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us. You can go ahead and get started.
All right. Thanks for having me. My name is Anna Stephens. I have 3 children in the MMSD school district. I'm speaking tonight because I have concerns. I was reading today from a fellow advocate that the board is voting on a potential proposition to loosen the requirements around IDEA and IEPs. And I feel that that is a mistake. I think that not vetting that properly with the community that it affects is inappropriate. I think that it's a really big decision. And yes, we all fully agree that the pandemic has made fulfilling IEPs absolutely horrendous. I have a 15-year-old who doesn't speak and uses communication devices, and class is insane, right? I mean, but I'm just concerned about the idea of loosening up the requirements. Just kind of scares me. What we're getting right now for class isn't ideal, and it just makes me nervous without it. And I just wanted to come on and say, we're not unappreciative of the fact that it's difficult, but we don't think that making this decision without fully vetting it is the right decision. We just, we're in a time where we're being told to choose classes because they are the teachers who might be more friendly to kids with disabilities. Those are the kinds of decisions that are being made. And, already as parents, we are making the choice to have to not put our kids in school, even though we're allowed to, because they might get COVID, because it's happened at our school, because positives have happened literally at the school my child was at. And even if school goes back to being in person, actually it makes it worse because my child absolutely can't enter a building. So we understand those things, and we understand that it's difficult, but I think that right now, for where it's sitting, it's already not meeting the criteria that it should, even with what it's at, even as hard as it is. It's just not, it's just not meeting what needs to happen. And it may not, we may all do that. We're just accepting that that's the case this year, that a lot of kids aren't going to get exactly what they need. But I don't think loosening up the reins is the right choice. And I do think that it needs to be a bigger conversation before a decision is made. So that's what we're asking, or that's what I'm asking tonight, is that you guys kind of take a second to just, put a pause on that and reach out to the communities that might affect more before making that decision.
Great, thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Joe Sensenbrenner. I'm president of the board of Rooted, and this is the third time I have spoken on behalf of the negotiations and the transaction involving 501 Badger Road, item 14.2. I speak in favor of the transaction. This school and the ancillary activities will be a very good benefit for the students, for the neighborhood, for the teachers, for the district, and for the community. I also want to compliment the staff of the district with whom we have worked very commodiously for the last 2 years and gotten it to a point which I think is going to benefit all concerned. So my brief wish is that an affirmative vote be taken tonight, and I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for joining us. Hello, Erin.
Hi,
Thank you for joining us. You can go ahead and get started.
thanks for having me tonight. My name's Erin Stephens. I'm a teacher and a parent. I have 2 kids in MMSD, both in elementary school. And I just wanted to speak tonight about the prospect of reopening. And I believe that we shouldn't reopen for Q3 yet, because I don't believe it's safe. I think we're nearing the end of this race. I saw some news reports today where people were even estimating that by March or April, there could be a vaccine for people without pre-existing conditions available in our state. It just seems to me like, why would we quit now at mile 23 of a 26-mile race? Like we're almost at the finish line. I believe that if one teacher or student were to contract COVID at this time, if we were to reopen and someone were to get COVID from the reopening, I feel like that would be on the district at that point. We're so close to the end. I feel like it's not something we should be considering at this point. The numbers are really bad in our state right now, and they're worse than they've been in before. And so I do think it could be catastrophic to reopen. As a parent, I just want to say that I have my doubts about the district's ability to reopen safely as well. And I haven't received a lot of communications about the plans for reopening. Will there be new HVAC systems in the buildings? Will my children who sit at tables have desks now that are going to be 6 feet apart? Will the windows be able to open in their rooms? Will they come into contact with people outside of their classroom? As a parent, I haven't seen this communication, and that makes me nervous. I also wonder what their day will look like if they go back at this point. Will they be in front of a computer the whole day? Will they be able to move around? It's just been a little bit unclear to me. So I just wanted to say that I'm opposed at this point to opening for Q3. I think we're almost to that point where we could maybe do it safely, but I don't think we're there yet. Thank you.
Great,
Thank you, Erin. That was our last speaker, Ms. Reyes.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, we have, next is approval of minutes. It doesn't look like we have any. And next we have some announcements. MMSD staff student among 2020 North Star Award winners. Every year, the Northside News North Star Awards recognize those working diligently, often behind the scenes, to make the North Side a better place to live and play. This year, that work has been critical as our country and our community grapple with two pandemics. One, COVID-19, sudden and recent, and the other, racism, deeply entrenched. Individuals have stepped up to fill gaps in support and resources to address inequities and to imagine new ways of being. Some of this work has been taking place for years and some of it has just begun. All of it essential. The board congratulates all of this year's award recipients, including Lelani Rivera, senior at East High School, for the Youth Award, Deshala Walker, social worker at Lakeview Community School, Sonia Spencer, Community Schools Resource Coordinator at Mendota Community School, Chase West at MSCR Cares Director at Lakeview Community School, and Jocelyn Quintal Lepensky at Universal Systems, coach at MMSD. Congratulations to our North Star Award winners. Wright Middle Schooler delivers speech at National Avid Virtual Conference in December. Joanna Gonzalez, 8th grader at Wright Middle School, entered the Advancement via Individual Determination Student Speaker Contest earlier this year in May. She competed against her peers locally and nationally for the opportunity to deliver her speech at the annual AVID conference. The AVID College Readiness Program offered in the district is designed to help young students to develop the skills needed to be successful in college. Joanna's speech, Here I Am, describes how being an AVID scholar has impacted her life, inspiring her to use her voice for social change. The board congratulates Joanna Gonzalez for her hard work and commitment to social justice, as well as all the other dedicated AVID students who delivered speeches. Those were the two announcements, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Superintendent Dr. Carlton Jenkins.
Whereas other members of the board, thank you so much for this opportunity tonight to come here and make a big announcement. Since I arrived here in town, we've been talking a lot about what we wanted to do in the area of reading. Out on the campaign trail, we talked a lot about what we were going to do with reading. And as you know, we've talked a lot about the science of reading, but what we wanted to really do, and during the interviewing process, and since I've been here in town, we talked about taking what we're doing here in our district, the practice of what we're doing with some of our outstanding staff, getting our teachers and our administrators involved in partnering with UW-Madison. So this afternoon, I'm very pleased to be here to announce, along with Dean Hess, this new early literacy and beyond partnership that we're going to engage in with both staff from UW and MMSD. And we're very excited as we know that we're founding some of our thinking, basing it around the science of reading, but we're going to be investigating all reading as we are going to be taking on not only just the primary part, but moving beyond and looking at how we continue to keep our students engaged in the love of reading itself. I'm going to introduce Dean Hess, and then after that, we're going to have our assistant superintendent, who's going to be co-chairing the committee, also speak to you a little bit more about where we are with how the committee will function. So at this time, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Dean Hess, University of Wisconsin-Madison School of Education.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Jenkins, and good evening to President Reyes and members of the board. Today was a very exciting day. At the press conference at 1 o'clock, we announced the new initiative that is the Early Literacy and Beyond Task Force. And I'm thrilled that this has come together and that we'll be moving forward. I think rather quickly. The task force will begin its work in January, and we hope it completes its work by June. The task force has members with a wide range of expertise. You know, I'm really pleased that there's an equal number of members from UW-Madison and from MMSD, that the task force is jointly co-chaired, that I think is going to be a good thing as well. One of the things that I want to note is that a number of the task force members from UW-Madison have been K-12 teachers before they entered higher ed. And in fact, 2 of them were teachers in MMSD. So I know people often think that faculty in higher education, you know a lot about theory, a lot about research, and not as much about practice. But I can promise you that is certainly not the case with the members of this task force. And I'm just fully supportive of this work going forward. And I look forward to yet another successful collaboration. One of the things that I really appreciate about MMSD is how good the district has been historically at meaningful partnerships. And many of those partnerships have been with the UW-Madison School of Education. Forward Madison, the Madison Educational Partnership are just 2 that come to mind. But I think this new task force on early literacy and beyond is a fabulous opportunity for us to work not only on what can happen in MMSD to improve literacy instruction, but what can happen on the School of Ed side as well. So I'm very excited about this and look forward to the recommendations that the task force will be bringing forward in June.
I want to say thank you again, Dean Hess, and also coming to the table, we have also partnered with Dr. Gloria Lassen-Billings. Ms. Kiff said, we'll talk about that in a moment. Our assistant superintendent from MMSD will also talk about some of our members and what we're looking to get out of this. And I'm very excited that Ms. Kiffstad is leading this charge with a very diverse group from our side, and she will share that with you. Ms. Kiffstad.
Barb, I think you have to unmute me or let me start my video.
Okay, one moment.
I know you're trying to keep me off of it. There we go. Perfect. Thank you, Barb. Sorry for the delay there.
Thank you.
And Barb, I think that we are ready with our PowerPoint for the next part of the presentation.
Okay.
So again, thank you very much, Dr. Jenkins, for kicking this off tonight. And Dean Hess, thank you so much for being with us. We are really excited about the launch of our Early Literacy Task Force and really making clear to our community, to our families, to our children, that this is an explicit focus we have on early literacy and beyond. And this is an example of us moving from just talking about things to action, to asking the right questions that will lead to more positive results for our children, reducing the disparities that have existed for way too long in the Madison School District. Next slide, please.
You say you're, just so you know, you're cutting out a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Headset, awesome. Okay, great.
Okay, is that better, Gloria?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Great. I see Nikki nodding her head. Thank you, Nikki. So this is a summary of our strategy. You have seen this slide before, but again, this is an example of an equity imperative with a laser-like focus on early literacy and beyond. And the work that we want to celebrate with you tonight is our partnership with UW-Madison and Dean Diana Hess leading that with us, and also the work that we're doing with Gloria Lassen-Billings, in fact, work that's already started. She met with our senior leadership team last week, and tomorrow we're honored to have her work with all of our principals and our instructional coaches during the professional development day. Our task force, as Dr. Jenkins has mentioned, is filled with a diverse group of people with diverse perspectives. And this is about uplifting the voices. And as Dean has said this morning, asking the right questions so that we can, as a partnership, move this work forward and impact the literacy learning of our students. Next slide, please. So as we said, we are partnering and we'll be working with the local experts to focus on early literacy and beyond and have a focus on the science of reading. So as we said, Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings is working with us around anti-racist practices, culturally relevant pedagogy, and professional learning and curriculum development. And she also shared with us that she has a background in reading and is actually a reading specialist and has worked with students across the grade levels. So she brings a plethora of skills and talents to the work as well. And then Dean Hess will be working with us from UW-Madison to collaborate around new teacher development and support and what sort of work that new teachers in the teacher ed department, what they're learning about literacy and the teaching of reading. Next slide, please. So our task force has multiple charges that we will be following through with. And I do want folks to know that our task force will most certainly at some point in time also have some subcommittees to plan out some of this work. So as I said before, our task force is about lifting voices and hearing the diversity of thought. It's about understanding the current state of literacy and reading and instruction in MMSD and within teacher education at UW-Madison. We want to make recommendations based on the best scientific evidence that we have for the teaching of reading, both in Madison and with new teachers that are coming through UW. And we want to think about and take, not just think about, but actually take as well, next steps to strengthen the teaching of reading in both our partner organizations, the district and UW-Madison. We'll be sharing perspectives that are based on research and results, and some subcommittees and other folks will be examining materials and resources and informing timelines. This is a big deal. It is very important work. We want to be sure that we are supporting and lifting the voices of our talented teachers. We actually have a teacher with us that will be sharing a little bit tonight about the work that she has started. So we have some very dedicated folks already out in the schools doing some of this work and helping us to lead the charge. Next slide, please. So I will hand it over to Dr. Jenkins and Dean Hess to talk a little bit about the task force members that will be joining us in this work.
Dean Hess will take this slide as is UW-Madison's task force members.
So thank you so much. So John Diamond is the co-chair of the task force with Lisa, and the other members you can see. They are from 3 different departments: the Department of Psychology and Liberal Arts and Sciences, the Department of Curriculum and Instruction in the School of Education, and the Department of Rehab Psych and Special Ed in the School of Education as well. As I mentioned, there's a wealth of expertise here. And there's one of the things that I'm really excited about is that there are different perspectives here. And this morning we talked about the importance of making sure that we didn't lead with answers, but we led with questions. And I think one of the things that the members of the task force will bring to the table is the ability to rigorously analyze the very best evidence that they need to take a look at in order to make high quality recommendations.
Next slide, please. And as you can see from our team, we have a very diverse team as well. And I didn't mention that Dean Hess and myself, we're not going to sit directly on the task force. Our task force is going to be led by Dr. Diamond, co-chairing for the university, and Ms. Kifstead, co-chairing for MMSD. But here are our wonderful staff members. As you can see here, Ms. Kifstead, which you've heard from, Ms. Gabi Bell, Ms. Jackie Smith, and Miss Lisa Hepburn. And there's a story behind Miss Lisa Hepburn that we will talk about later. Our community people, individual, Miss Chan Stroman, and then we have Mr. Jorge there. And then we have also Dr. Hicks. And that makes up our team. And we have teachers represented, administrators represented, central office, and community individuals. This is keeping with our promise of putting the schools in the community and the communities in the schools. So each time we put together committees, we are going to have at least a community person also present. In our smaller breakout communities, we're going to have other opportunities for individuals in our community to also participate.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So again, as a reminder, this work is about leading with questions around the best practices and research around literacy and anti-racist practices and high expectations. We believe that those two pieces cannot be separated, and they serve as our North Star moving through this as we think about what our children need to succeed. Next slide, please. Again, we continue to ground ourselves and test ourselves in the work that we're doing around our commitment. We want to remind ourselves and think about this always in our commitment to Black excellence and high quality grade level accelerated instruction, helping students to get the skills early, to succeed in school, and really accelerate their learning. Next slide, please. So we wanted to share with you something that actually Gloria Ladson-Billings reminded us of the last time we spoke with her. And those were the 5 key concepts that are at the core of any effective reading instruction program. This is straight from the National Reading Panel. And these 5 components are listed here: phonics, phonemic awareness, comprehension, fluency, and vocabulary. We need all of those in our reading programs, and we need to pay attention to those and realize that particularly the pieces around phonics and phonemic awareness need to be explicitly taught in classrooms. And we will be talking about that when we talk about early literacy and beyond. We're talking about our youngest learners and also what we might need to support our older learners, our older students who perhaps haven't had this explicit instruction. Next slide, please. I am going to turn it over to Gabi Bell, our Interim Director of Literacy and the Humanities, because I do not think I can do these next 2 slides any kind of service, and I can't do them the way Gabi does. So I am going to turn it over to Gabi and have her remind us of the next 2 slides and how they actually explain the science of reading.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I always get the best slides. So why the science of reading? Am I right? So this afternoon, when we had the great pleasure of sitting across the room with the press, this question came out: why the science of reading? Why right now? And Dr. Jenkins spoke about that and said that, you know, today is as good of a day as any other day, with the understanding that we have been talking about different ways in which to engage in the explicit teaching of reading, and that we are poised right now through our anti-racist entry point and strategy to ensure that all of our students have access to really powerful instruction. So the science of reading is sitting on a theoretical framework that is called the simple view of reading. And the simple view of reading is a mathematical formula. So think about it as a multiplication, where you have 2 items that you're multiplying. And if either one of these 2 is 0, your final product is going to be 0. So we think about reading comprehension, reading and writing as the product that we're trying to drive for. And we are recognizing that in order to be able to do this, we need to engage in explicit systemic instruction about word recognition, encoding and decoding, and that we're going to multiply that by our language comprehension, because it makes sense. Am I right? It makes sense in monolingual minds that we are able to read and write about content, because once we encode, once we break the code, that word, that sentence, that paragraph carries meaning for us. And in multilingual settings, this is so much more true. Am I right? I am a reader and a writer in 3 languages, not only because I can encode and decode in those languages, but also because when I speak those words make sense for me. So the science of reading supports not only our English programs, but theoretically also supports our cross-linguistic setting formats. Can we go to the next one, Ms. Lisa? So what is it that we mean when we say encoding and decoding? And what is it that we mean when we talk about language? So what we are saying is that science and research and theory and pedagogical practice are inviting us to be absolutely explicit in our teaching of phonological awareness, of decoding and sight recognition. So think about it really as a rope, am I right? So from this end, I am explicitly teaching these things, but also I am strategically teaching language. And we're moving beyond vocabulary here. We're talking about background knowledge. We're talking, of course, about vocabulary because it's important, but we're talking about language structures, syntax, semantics, verbal reasoning, literary knowledge, all these things to ensure that we are moving beyond only one approach or the other, but we're understanding that reading and writing and literacy are a complex task, and that we're going to attend to that in such manner. I think that's all that I have.
Thank you, Gabi. Next slide, please. Again, I cannot do those two slides like you do, Gabi. I love that energy, and I love the way that you make that come to life. Thank you for being a part of this. So as we said during our last presentation, we actually have schools and staff and teachers and principals out there who are already doing some of this and who are already leading the charge as we work through this. Elvium Elementary and Gompers Elementary Schools are two schools that have been really digging into this and working with teacher teams and students to really look at how the early literacy strategy and the science of reading can be taught in classrooms. Next slide, please. But today, before we move on to actually the task force meeting, I would like to draw out two of our task force members, Lisa Hepburn, who is a teacher in MMSD and a member of MTI, and also Angie Hicks, who is an esteemed principal in MMSD of Wright Middle School. And they have agreed to chat a little bit about why this, why now, and how they think this can make a difference for MMSD and for the University of Madison. So if we could, Lisa, let's start with you. Would love to hear your perspective on this and why you think the time is right.
Absolutely. If someone would like to, I don't think I can turn on my video camera right now. Maybe that's preferable.
Moment, I'm sorry. How's that?
I think that worked. Great. Thank you so much. I am just so delighted to be here. I can't even tell you how excited I am that we're doing this. I'm Lisa Hepburn. I'm a bilingual resource teacher. I've been in the district for 12 years. A little bit of background about me. I kind of came to teaching kids in a non-circuitous route. I used to teach adults. I worked at the Madison Area Literacy Council for a number of years, about 20 years ago. And during that time, most of my charge was to teach ESL, English as a Second Language, adult learners. But there was a part of that organization that dealt with adults who had not achieved the kind of skilled reading that matches their intelligence or enables them to acquire a job that really pays them well. And so it's with that backdrop that, I didn't really know what to say about that at the time, but it was something that I noticed. And then I made the switch to public education in 2007, teaching mostly in grades 4 and 5. And through the years, I noticed the same trend that kids were not able to read and write in ways that matched their intelligence, that enabled them to express how smart they are, the ideas that they have. And I was lucky enough in 2017, 18, I was teaching at Sandburg Elementary at the time, and there was a partnership between MMSD and the Children's Dyslexia Center. And my principal, Brett Wilfred, invested the time. It was quite a lot of time. I was the only bilingual resource teacher who got training in Orton Gillingham, which is something that maybe some of you know. It's an approach to very direct instruction, structured literacy. The result of that, I had 2 practicum students, I was doing a practicum, and I had 2 students who were on opposite ends of a dyslexia continuum. One of them was quite challenged. The other was kind of on the mild end. And with just a few months of instruction, the one on the mild end was able to, she leaped about 2 years in her reading ability. And that was amazing. The other one, while he improved dramatically, he did not make those kinds of gains, which really underscores the importance of very early and targeted intervention, which is what LETTERS is all about. And that's what Dr. Jenkins is bringing to the district. I'm so excited for everyone to have this kind of knowledge and background, because it empowers teachers. When Gabi was talking about Scarborough's reading rope, I feel that excitement. And the reason why she feels that is because this works. Like, when teachers get even a little taste of scientifically based instruction, it's so effective, they're going to want more. Like, this is going to be big. I want to give a quick shout out to Gloria Reyes, who I think last month was asking about, well, what about all the learners that, didn't make it in K2 and they're in middle school and high school now? The science of reading, there's something for those middle school teachers too. Gabi talked about the reading rope and where syntax is on there. That's a big thing. Learning how to, write short sentences and then expand them again with embedded clauses. Learning how to do that helps kids untangle that complex language, right, that they encounter in middle school and advanced placement classes. So there's just so much empowerment for both teachers and students with this. And I guess I'll close by saying another benefit of LETTERS training, which is perhaps one way that anti-racist education meets the science of reading, is with linguistic diversity and that kind of awareness. LETTERS training empowers teachers with the ability to understand language difference and enables them to, celebrate and not correct home language, all the while helping them reach those elevated levels of skilled reading. So I'm humbled to be on this task force. I'm excited to partner with the UW and my colleagues.
Lisa, thank you so much for that perspective and for the thinking that you're going to bring to this work with us and with UW. We're really looking forward to it. Angie Crawford, can you share a little bit with us the work that is to come and how critical you think this is for the students we serve?
Thank you. Yes, from being a UW-Madison undergraduate and then a teacher and now a principal in MMSD, I have a variety of perspectives on what reading has looked like, what the teaching of at the university level and undergrad it looked like, but more importantly, at the place now of what it should look like, in terms of making sure that there is a connection, and the connection is real. It's the word recognition, the syntax, the language processing. Coming from a middle school level background in terms of leadership, but my teaching was at elementary, I intentionally tried to make a shift for middle school, my staffing and certification to be 1A and not secondary, because of the way in which elementary teachers are taught to think about young people as a whole child and not just the academic content. And what I have found is that it has helped immensely in terms of knowing how to reach kids and how to get them where they need to be. What I've noticed a lot is scholars who come into the middle school level, they are not where they need to be. And teachers also need to have the skills and the knowledge and the expertise in order to get them to where they can be and where they should be. And I think when you talk about the timing and now, and it is right, why not now? It has to be now. We have to continue to forge ahead and make sure that we don't leave any scholar behind. If for some reason something occurred in elementary, we need to pick up the charge and make sure that we're addressing it at the middle school level as well. We don't want to let no child fall through the cracks. Early literacy and beyond, it's the beyond piece. It doesn't stop. And I think sometimes we get stuck in that notion of learning to read is just at the pre-K 2 level and not thinking of it as a lifelong skill that scholars need to have and that teachers need to be able to fulfill and teach young people. I'm really excited about this because, again, when we talk about equity and we talk about anti-racist practices, this has to be one of them. Thank you.
Angie, thank you so much for speaking. We appreciate your leadership voice and are really looking forward to having you and all the knowledge that you bring and all of that work that I know you've been doing even around deeper learning with the other districts across the nation. All of that will really inform the work moving forward. So thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Angie, for joining us tonight. I know you've been all day working with students and teachers, so we know this is a long day for you, but your voice really matters and is meaningful, so thank you. So our last piece on this, and then I will turn it back over to Dr. Jenkins and Dean Hess for the final words, is we are going to hold our first task force meeting in January of 2021. More news to come on the actual date and an agenda for that. But this was our formal kickoff. We, as you can see, are really excited about this and are happy to have such a diverse group of folks working together to support our children and our educators as they come into our systems across the state to work with our youngest readers. So Dr. Jenkins or Dean Hess, I will pass it over to you.
Okay, and I'm going to have my colleague Dean Hess, if you would like to start off first, and then I'll close it out.
Well, thank you for that presentation. And again, I just want to reiterate that, you know, we are very excited about this. We're looking forward to working together collaboratively. And I think we're going to get a set of excellent recommendations from this very fine task force.
Thank you so much, Dean Hess. And I can't say enough thank yous to you for your courage of stepping up, because this is a tough task. I want to make sure that everyone understands that. This has been years in the making where we've fought about what are the best practices, and we have plenty of history to tell us that what we've currently done, what we've done in the past and what we're currently doing just doesn't work for all children. During our campaign for the referendum, we talked about correcting some of the historical wrongs, what's happened for African-American children, for Latinx children, special needs children, poor children, ELL children, and making sure that we reach the level of excellence for all children. Currently, let's not look at it as a us and them. Let's look at it, we want excellence for all children. in our country right now, 33% of white middle-class children are not reading proficiently. Look within our district. That's unacceptable. We have an opportunity to partner with one of the best universities in the world, demonstrated, not just talked about, and come in with some of the most outstanding staff and committed staff that you want to see in MMSD. And we can partner, and we could be the ones to figure this thing out and live up to our promise of the referendum of ensuring that all of our children have exactly what they need. I want to thank all of our presenters tonight. You have inspired me even more. And I want to take this time to say thank you to the board for believing in us and giving us this opportunity to partner to do the work that needs to be done in MMSD. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins and Dinah Hess and everyone who has joined us tonight. This was so informative, really important work. I'm so excited about this partnership with UW. When Dr. Jenkins first came in and talked about how we, had the university here in our backyard, and why are we not using them and partnering with them, top university with amazing professionals and experts in the field of education, and strengthening that partnership. It just, I knew that was going to be one of his first priorities. And so thank you, Dr. Jenkins, for really paving the way in your leadership in this very important topic. We're going to go ahead and open it up for questions. And then I'll close it out. So it looks like we got a few. We have Nikki and then Ali.
I want to thank everyone and Dean Hess and everyone involved, Dr. Jenkins, on this early literacy piece. Especially thanks to Lisa Hepburn, trying to explain to people outside the disability community the need for Orton Gillingham teaching without people looking at me like I was from Mars. It was kind of like, no one knows what that is. It was kind of refreshing to actually have people who not only knew what it was, knew how to use it. And it's an excellent way to work with students with dyslexia. In fact, that is the best way, according to research. I'm just thrilled to do whatever it takes to help with this program. Because I think if our kids can't read, they can't. After grade 3, you're reading to learn. And if you can't read the material, you're going to just keep getting behind further and further and further. And that doesn't just go away. So I just appreciate it, and anything I can do to help, please let me know.
Thank you, Nikki. Ali?
Yeah, I want to thank the task force for the enthusiasm around this work and for the variety of experiences you all are bringing to the table. I want to highlight the voices of Dr. Angie Hicks and Gabby Bell for really kind of driving home the multifaceted approach that we are embodying, and the needs of all students rising to our kind of the level of our top priority. I really appreciate that we've moved beyond kind of a deficit approach and kind of an approach that emphasizes kids being behind, and really are speaking to meeting students where they're at and seeing students as individuals, and also really looking at ourselves as a district that has students who, immigrate at all different times in their lives, right? So we're teaching English through K through 12 for all kinds of kiddos. And it is so great to see us as a district recognize those students and prioritize those students. I want to draw some attention to something that I continue to bring up, which is how are we using the arts to enhance students' experiences within reading, particularly theater. The other thing I want to speak to quickly is the idea of high expectations. If you grew up in the Black community, you've probably heard work twice as hard for half as much your entire life. We talk about high expectations in terms of the student a lot when we're talking about students of color. We don't talk about alleviating the pressure and strain of racism and discrimination. And in order to be fair to our students, in order to have real conversations about equity, we have to acknowledge that racism and discrimination harm children, and there has to be a healing process, and there has to be a commitment from us as a community to embrace truth and reconciliation around that. And so as much as I appreciate striving for every single student to have access to an excellent education and to reach their full potential, I think really looking at what we mean when we say something like high expectations about students who have been marginalized by our society is something we have to do and examine very closely. I greatly appreciate this work, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. Any other questions? Ananda, comments?
Go ahead, Christina.
Go ahead, Ananda, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ananda.
Christina was after you.
Hi, everyone. I'm trying to do multitasking. This is the first time I've eaten all day. And I'm super glad to see you, Dr. Hess. So such a gift to have you join us. I'm super excited and inspired by the presentation. Also extremely excited about the composition of the task force. Making the intentionality of the people that comprise the task force, the intentionality of making sure of community voice. To your point, Gloria, when you were talking about Dr. Jenkins and his ability to say, wait, like there's this potential partnership, why are we not leveraging? I think the next part is that, like, how do we not just leverage, but make it be for real? And so I think have Diana joining us in the meeting. I think it's not just a symbolism, but it's an exemplification of the leadership of our district. So I'm greatly appreciated. Great to see Angie and Gabi here with us as well. And thank you so much, Lisa, for bringing the human perspective to what sometimes just becomes like educational jargon. To the point around English learners, my daughter was born and raised in the Midwest, spent her entire academic year in MMSD, and it is an English learner, right? Was an English learner. And so I think that there's so much about language acquisition that we're still discovering, myths that we needed to be unpacking, and not only for immigrants or children of immigrants, but for anyone that is not a white European, that is not being exposed to white European English, right? So we're talking about Black and African Americans, we're talking about Indigenous children, we're talking about Hmong children, we're talking about Cambodian children, right? We're talking about children that are exposed to multiple languages at home and in their community, that now attending our schools, and we having this promise and this guarantee that they will learn, that they will engage into learning, and that they will engage into reading, and then engage into writing. So that's extremely exciting to have practitioners that are super committed to unearth these myths and be able to speak about the ability to read and write as this journey for all of us. I'm just wanted to commend you all for this work. I wanted to share my commitment to all of you opening doors or supporting policies and supporting initiatives that will continue to further this work. So thank you everyone for this leadership, for this inspiration. It feels so good to, even though it's late at night on a Monday, to just be able to have this refresher for all of us. So very, very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ananda. Christina?
Thank you. I just want to echo the sentiments of others who are saying how excited they are about this work moving forward. And I just want to say how much I believe that this really has the potential to be transformative for how our teachers teach and how our students learn. And I'm just very excited. Dr. Jenkins, when you came in and were so enthusiastic about this work, to see how all of these pieces have come together and to see how this task force is looking to move forward. I'm just really appreciative and really looking forward to being part of this work. I'd also just like to thank you for speaking to how we're going to continue to involve the community, because this really is going to be a community effort going forward. And I know there are a lot of people in our schools and in our community who are really enthusiastic about this and really dedicated to the success of this endeavor. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Christina. Chris?
I think Savian had his hand up before me. If you want to go, Savian.
Yeah, I'll go quickly. Well, this is a huge lift, and I just want to say how impressed I am by Dr. Jenkins and everybody on the committee to bring together such a diverse group of people with all the expertise in the world, especially partnering with UW-Madison. So Dean Hess, thank you so much for bringing a diverse group of people from UW too. And also just want to highlight how important it is that we attack this from an anti-racist lens too. You know, it's not lost on me the testimony from our student at Memorial today, talking about, you know, some of the images and depictions of folks of color in our textbooks. And so to look at that lens from an early level too, it's so important. And so you just want to highlight that we're bringing that lens to the table.
Thank you, Savian. Chris?
Yeah, want to echo what everybody else said. I'm really excited about this task force. And Dr. Jenkins, I'm just so impressed with how quickly you hit the ground running with this work. So, you know, thank you so much for not only making this a priority, but acting on that priority in an expedient way. It's fantastic. I really want to lift up what Dr. Hicks said about educating the whole child, and what Ollie said about the arts. I was so excited to hear you say that, because as much as this task force is about the science of reading, I feel like it also has to be about embracing educating the whole child, and literacy is a part of that. And in addition to lifting up the arts and lifting up anti-racism, I think we have to look at science and social studies and outdoor education and how all of those experiences lead to raising kids who are literate and engaged and, you know, not only understand the world around them, but can, you know, actively contribute to it. So, I'm really excited about the potential for this task force to approach reading from that kind of a holistic perspective. So thank you.
Great. I think we've captured everyone.
Chair Race.
Yep.
Yeah, let me just add this last part, if I would. First of all, I thank you everyone for all the comments that's been made. And I really appreciate the fact that we talked about doing, using art to support what we're trying to do around reading. But let me just be really clear about when I was also talking about the science of reading, I said to correct the historical wrongs. I want to make sure everyone understand what I'm saying. When I say correct the historical wrongs, Blacks were not allowed to read. You, as a white person, would be fined for teaching someone to read. That's a historical wrong. When you talk about the Latinx, when you talk about children who were special needs, there was not an expectation that they would learn to read. And if you're poor, regardless of what color you were not having the same level of access. So we start with reading. I don't want us to lose reading. And when you talk about the accountability piece, I don't know if you guys know this little lady named Dr. Lassen Billings, Gloria Lassen Billings. She is no joke. The accountability piece will be there. The culture relevancy piece will be there. This is a great anti-racist strategy. I continue to say we are an anti-racist district, okay? Are we? We're an anti-racist city, are we? Do this and do it well, then we will become the model for everyone else. You heard a diverse group of people speaking. Who would have ever thought Gabi would have led this discussion as eloquently as she wouldn't have been allowed to? I'm not talking about 1,000 years ago. We are in the midst of a moment. This is the movement. at another level. And I just encourage everybody to remember we are here together. This is not an accident. This is meant to happen, and great things can come out of it. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. I think, and I just love this partnership. But as I always feel in every meeting about education, is that I feel a sense of urgency, right? It is, we love in this city, I'm just going to push a little bit, right? We love in this city, in this community, task forces, right? I think we needed to start here. I get it. It is a establishing that foundation of partnership. And Dr. Jenkins, you are establishing that relationship. But I really do feel, right, that we have to move. And I'm just wondering, what is the timeline? And is this going to be a working task force where we are actually putting some metrics, timelines while we are doing this work, and not waiting until a year of like exploration, research, and then coming, next year with some recommendations or whatever? What type of task force is this? Because I do feel like, this is great work. I want to get going on it. I don't want to lose any more children. And can we start tomorrow?
So let's have Dean Hess speak to it first, and then I'll follow up with it.
So I really appreciate that. When we talked about the timeline for the task force, we wanted to make it pretty fast. And when I called the prospective members from the UW and talked to them about it, I was pretty clear about that this is not something that we're going to be, having meetings for 2 years before there's a set of recommendations. The task force will start in January. It will get to work. It needs to have high quality administrative support behind it, which it will have. And we're hoping that the recommendations can be issued by June.
And that's from the university. In the district, from the moment I interviewed after the first time, I started receiving communications from staff, from teachers. The district had already engaged in some work. It just had not been solidified as to the work. So we've already started on something. There were already things being piloted in the district. But with this budgetary cycle that we're in right now, Lisa and I have had conversation. She's taken the bull by the horn, been out talking to the staff. We've gone out. Some staff wanted to jump on it right now. I said, I don't want us to jump fast and not go well. I want us to go and engage all people. If you look around, this is MTI at the table. This is the Principal Association at the table. We're building a critical mass of people to move forward. But in each budgetary cycle, you invest in what you believe and what you value. So you will see coming forward what we invest in. We're not getting into this whole discussion yet of our other curricular textbook resources yet. We're going to be listening to the recommendations. We will get there. There are other phases. What we're making a commitment to is doing the professional development. You heard Lisa Hepburn say that her principal sent her. Well, we want more staff to be able to go. And honestly, with this, we have to look at not only our primary, but our sixth grade. We're talking about responding to the COVID loss. Our sixth graders, we must take these reading strategies into the middle schools. And that was at your question, like, when will the other students starting to get it? But I don't want us to do it too fast to the point we don't have the capacity to deliver on the promise. So we're being very intentional, but it's a right here, right now. We don't have 5 years to wait on this. This must come out. And we'll take the recommendation from the task force, because we're going to the task force with an open mind, and we're going to be in there sparring A-list people. Not only Dr. Gloria Lassen-Billings, but you have Mark Seidenberg. Then you have Teresa from the university. You have that education department. We're bringing the best brains to spar. So this would be ongoing, getting better. And when we find out something better, we're going to do it. We're not going to wait 40 years to have to pivot. We're going to have the best brains, and we're going to put forth the best play. I understand totally what you're saying. It needs to be a sense of urgency. Believe me when I say this. There is a sense of urgency over this.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, I think that having, I've always felt that, why we don't have Dr. Gloria Latzen-Billings working with us, and John Diamond, who, I felt was just in our backyard, like why, bringing him on board. And just, you have a phenomenal team of experts that you have convened both from UW and MMSD. And so I'm confident that we will move forward and see results. And thank you, Dr. Jenkins, for, acknowledging the urgency on this, right? And that this can't be a typical task force that we have seen in the past in this community. Savion?
Yeah, I just want to say, I can feel the urgency through the screen. I know Dr. Hicks moves expeditiously in her school and throughout the community. I guess my only question is, will board members have an opportunity to sit in on a task force just to listen to the conversation?
We're going to have different times, and Dean has definitely, please weigh in, but we talked about there would be times that the task force will meet, and then there will be times that it's open to other individuals, and there are going to be subcommittees. But this particular committee, what I had also asked is that certain board members become like the liaisons. And when we had talked, it was like Nikki and Gomez being Chris Gomez. I was trying to say the other Chris Caruzzi, but I meant Gomez. I get them both twisted sometimes. But anyway, to be the liaisons for this particular piece of what we're going to do. We have a lot of work to do. This is just one strand, but this strand is going to impact others. But this is not something that we're keeping. This is a community that's going to be able to look in. We're doing this work, this task force, under the eyes of the entire community. And there have been other districts already calling DPI. I've had conversations with, there are other people already want to watch this work. So it won't be a secret. We're going to be transparent about what we're doing. Dean have thoughts?
I just want to add one thing. I think that one of the reasons why there's so much enthusiasm for this task force is not because this is the first partnership that we've ever done together, but because we have a history of having successful partnerships. So for example, Professor Diamond and Professor Latson-Billings have done a lot of work with the district through Forward Madison, which, as you know, has been going on since 2014. We've got the Madison Educational Partnership that's been going on for a number of years. I think what's new about this is the first time the university has come together with MMSD to focus explicitly on early literacy and beyond. But I think that the trust that's been built up over the last several years is what will enable us to do a good job here and to do it expeditiously.
Great, thank you. All right. Okay, well, thank you for attending and for this phenomenal presentation. We will move on through the agenda unless anybody else has any other comments, questions. All right, let's move on. Thank you, Dinah Hess, Lisa.
Thank you.
And Angie. Gabi, thank you. You guys are welcome to stay if you want, but and I don't know who else I'm missing, but hopefully I'm not missing anybody else. All right. So next is a report on items that proceeded through the instruction work group held December 7th, 2020. Ananda?
Yeah, thank you so much, President Reyes. I just want to have the entire meeting be of claps. It was supposed to be funny, but okay, somewhat funny. At our last meeting, we had a couple of pretty extensive bodies of work being shared with us. One, it was just a comprehensive ways to look at secondary schools and what's happening in our high schools, but in particular also focusing on what's happening with pathways. I really appreciate my colleagues' questions around what's happening with Metro, what's happening with Children in Detention Center, in particular the impact of COVID in all those programming. We also have had a really sharp lens on what specifically is happening for students with IEPs in this transition time. Our next meeting instruction work group meeting will be January 11th. And I wanted to thank all the young people. I always love to hear from young people when they come to give public comments, and I really appreciate their sharp lenses and their critical thinking around what they're reading, really confronting that and demanding change. I just wanted to say I really appreciated that. I was texting Lisa Kivstad when they were sharing to make sure that we bring some of that conversation and some of the things that, and I'll let Lisa share some other comments. Lisa, do you want to add anything else to what's happening with secondary high school textbooks?
Oh, I was chatting with Kaylee, our Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction. We are already aware of what is going on with a certain set of textbooks there. Kaylee is already on it, and we are working through it. So Ananda, thanks for lifting that.
Yeah, thank you. And it was definitely, like, I remember one of my early conversations with Lisa when I became the chair of the instruction work group. From 4K to 12th grade, we needed, our children need to be exposed to facts and need to be exposed to accuracy in regards to history. And we should be paying attention to that. In particular, because there is Act 31 asked all of us board members to ensure that there is accurate history being shared in regards not just for indigenous communities and the history of indigenous people in this country, but also for African Americans and Latinx and among Asian Americans. So I really appreciate the sharpness on the conversation, and we'll probably get some updates on what's happening in that regard. But thank you so much for the young people that came and shared with us their concern. I share those concerns with them. Aside from virtual learning updates, as we always do in our instruction work group, we're also going to be engaged in conversation of what's happening with family engagement now that our parents, our families, our guardians are now going into going into buildings and not engaging or participating in school activities in the same way that we did before. We also going to be talking about community schools and attributes to community schools and reviewing our cycles of review. Lisa, did that cover? Great, thank you so much, President Race.
Great, thank you, Ananda. Now, report on items that proceeded through the operations work group. Chris?
Thanks, Gloria. We did not meet in December. We will next meet on Tuesday, January 19th. And agenda items proposed for that meeting include kicking off the 2021-22 budget year. We'll be talking about our strategy and our overall timeline. We'll be talking about Title I allocation strategy, and we may be discussing the employee handbook as well. And that's it. Thanks, Gloria.
Great, thank you, Chris. Okay, now we're moving into the consent agenda. I will read the main motion. If there are any separations, just let me know. I move that the Board of Education adopt and approve all of the motions set forth in Section 10 of the electronic agenda prepared for the December 14th, 2020 regular school board meeting, exactly as said motions are written. By voting affirmatively on this motion, a board member expresses his or her affirmative vote on each of the motions consolidated hereby, subject to any express separation that have been made by any member of the school board. Can I get a second? Anand?
A second.
Another second? Okay. Any discussion, separations? Oh, Ananda, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to separate 10.7 regarding natural circles of support. My state grant supports and endorses this program, so I have a conflict. Thank you.
Okay. Chris?
I would like to separate 10.6.
Okay. Christina, did you have other, or I'm sorry, Chris Crucy?
Yeah, I'd like to separate 10.9.
Okay. Any other separations? Okay, we'll go ahead and all those in favor of approving the consent agenda items with separations of 10.7, 10.6, and 10.9. All those in favor? Aye, show of hands.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. So let's work through 10.6.
Yes, this one is the foundational, the funding for foundational skills, virtual resources for DLI, DBE, and bilingual program. And I pulled this from the consent just maybe to ask more of a question. Understanding that these resources are needed and in support of this investment. But actually to follow up on some questions that we've received from families who have students in our Hmong bilingual program at Lakeview Elementary. And in taking a look at this, it looks like the investment is going to support the English side of our DLI and our DBE programs, but I'm wondering, it sounds like the concerns of these families is that we don't have enough support for the Hmong language side of this program at the current moment. And so I'm wondering if we are needing an additional investment in that. It sounds like a lot of the work is being done by our staff to translate all the materials that are needed as we build this bilingual program at Lakeview, and sort of wondering more about the resources that are needed.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for the question. We've been talking about this quite a bit over the last couple of weeks, and I will have Gabi add as well the work that we've been doing around this. The Hmong DBE program is such a valued program and investment in our families and children, and we know how much the Hmong community values the work that's been done. There are, and Gabi, I'm probably being overly generous when I say little to no resources in Hmong. We have to literally write all of that curriculum ourselves. So this piece that we're purchasing actually supports the Hmong program on the English side of the house. There was a gap there as well. But just so you know, Chris and fellow Board of Education folks here tonight, we are also trying to be sure that we have consistent staffing and support for the Hmong program moving forward. We can't just rely on one person to do all of it. So we want to be sure that you know, there is a talent strategy there as well. So Gabi, I'm going to hand it off to you to talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, as soon as I heard Hmong, I'm like, unmute. Thank you so much for the question. It is a powerful question and it requires the time. So let me put a little bit of context. So we are one of 5 programs in the entire continental US that is going at this incredible work of developing biliteracy in Hmong and in English. Okay. So that is like just off the gate, like there's not a lot of publishers that are doing work in Hmong. For text, far less for foundational skills. Another beautiful complexity about the foundational skills component of the Hmong program is that Hmong has been a spoken language for a very long time, and there are 3 Hmong linguistic constructions. So it is not a universal language, am I right? Like it has different entry points. So it has been a spoken language. There is more than one Hmong language. I don't want to use the word dialect, but there's more than one form of the language. And the language has only been Romanized since the 1970s. And it was Romanized by a French priest that used all that he knew about his own language, phonology, and morphology to be able to write it. So there's a very, very few research papers that point us into how easy that among phonology, morphology, and orthography works, but we have gotten a hold of all the research that exists. We have collaborated with the districts across the nation that are very, very few, to be able to learn alongside with them, because we all have baby programs doing this. We are very fortunate to also have enough native speakers of Hmong at Lakeview that are partnering alongside with us. I have a strong background in linguistics, so although I am not a Hmong speaker, I can ask the questions related to the language so that we can support in the creation of the phonics foundational skills for Hmong, so that we can assume the great gift that the science of reading gives us in ensuring that encoding and decoding happens in a way that supports not only literacy in Hmong, but also across languages and in English. So to answer the question, there is nothing that has been published that would support us in this. Having the resources in English and being attentive to cross-linguistic analysis, which is our intent for both programs through these resources, is something that we're taking really seriously. And we are working and loving our team at Lakeview through making instructional decisions and supporting that pathway. So did I answer the question?
Yeah, I think you did, and it just for me highlights the expertise needed for the staff that are in these positions, and that it's not only staff working with the DBE program at the elementary, but we have staff who are translating everything that we do into Hmong, which is a really important job in this district too. And so just to make sure that both sides of this and the school itself has the support as it builds this program is just something that I wanted to highlight.
Yes.
So thank you.
No, thank you. May I just say one more thing, because I also believe that it's very important for us to celebrate and rejoice in all this great work. ATDLE, which is our National Association for Teaching of World Language Programs, has a strong for Hmong, and our very own teachers from Lakeview presented this last week in it. So we do have expertise, and we do have a lot to celebrate. So it's a lot of work, but we also have a lot to celebrate. So thank you for the opportunity of us answering the question.
Thank you, Gabby. And Lisa, thank you for answering. Any other comments, questions on that one? Okay. All right, I move that the Board of Education approve a purchase from the Benchmark Education Company for foundational skills, virtual resources that will support both the DLI and DBE programs in both Spanish and Hmong in the total amount of $68,584, with funding from the 2020-21 OMGE CARES Act funds.
Second, Ali Muldrow.
Ali Muldrow, second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, aye. Raise hands, okay. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Now we'll go to 10.7, and that was separated due to a conflict of interest by Ananda. So any other questions on that, comments? 10.7. All right. I move that the Board of Education approve using $8,850 from the Family, Youth, and Community Engagement operating budget to support the addition of Lowell Elementary School to the existing contract for services with Natural Circles of Support. Can I get a second?
Second, Ali.
Chris, Ali, second. Okay. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, aye.
Can we get Julia's vote, please?
Sorry. All those in favor, aye. I'm sorry, Julia, your advisory vote. Aye. All those in favor, aye. Okay, any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Sorry about that, Julia.
One recusal.
And one recusal. 10.9.
So 10.9 is approving the expenditure for the Let's Talk customer service platform. And I just have a few questions about how this might affect communications with the MMSD community. Is there anybody who'd be able to answer that?
Hi, yes, Tim Lamont.
Hi, Tim. Good to see you. So my first question is, how will this change how families communicate with MMSD? And more specifically, would people still go to their local school if they have questions, or would they start with like a hotline before they start going to local schools?
So this would be in addition to all the other platforms that we have. This is a cloud-based program that is also very mobile friendly. So for some of our families that we've been challenged to communicate with, we know in most cases, at the very least, they have a mobile phone. So this is a very mobile friendly form of communicating. And you could either communicate through an app or on our website. One of the nice things about it is when you submit a question, there's software that will automatically route that to the subject matter expert within the school district. So the family gets a much more timely response with their information. And also, all of those responses are captured. So over time, the system is able to respond with information much more quickly. But we see this as a tool that will enhance and strengthen our ability to communicate in support of all these other tools that we have, especially when it comes to communicating with folks who don't have a lot of accessibility to the internet or other means of communication.
So, but again, if a family was to want to reach out to their teacher, to their principal, they would still have the flexibility to do that.
They would still have that, that flexibility, exactly.
So
this wouldn't replace any other form of communication. This would just augment it, support it, and strengthen it.
So that actually, I think, answers my second question, which was, would this change how people communicate with the board?
No, it wouldn't, unless the board it was a question directed for the board, and then that would be routed to the board.
Okay. And then my third question is, using this system, would calls or conversations about sensitive topics, like say a parent has a concern about their child being bullied, would that be going through the cloud? And if so, what are we doing to help maintain the security of, particularly the child?
I think that when that information, I don't know the answer of what type of security would it be involved with that cloud, but any information that would be captured for a future response would be filtered through communications. So we would be able to either change that information or hold that information back from going out. In most cases, though, the question would be routed to that subject matter expert within MMSD, and that person would make the judgment call on whether to respond through the system or use other means of communication at that point.
But in terms of the actual, communication that's being stored in the cloud, would Let's Talk, say, be using that information to train their computers to answer system questions, or would it really just be locked down and kept confidential to MMSD?
It would be confidential to MMSD, correct.
Great.
This is a popular program used by school districts, really one of the only tools designed specifically for school districts across the country. And so in each individual school district, all that information is contained within that school district.
Thanks. That's all my questions. I appreciate it.
Wait, Nikki and then Ananda.
My one question is, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
If it was sent to a board member, if it is a copy kept for open records purposes of it, was my question. Thank you.
Okay, Ananda?
Yeah, I appreciate Chris's line of question, ways of using that I did not think about it when I read the memo. I'm wondering, Chris, if do you have a specific concern aside from privacy?
My two main concerns were maintaining our students' privacy and making sure that people who feel more comfortable contacting somebody they know or have a relationship with aren't prevented from doing that, that they wouldn't be told they have to call a hotline. They can actually, if they have a good relationship with somebody at their local school, they can start with that person, because those relationships are so important.
Tim, can you talk a little bit about like what do you see is the like are going to be the most of the calls, or what has other districts have experienced?
Well, this is an interactive way of communicating for our families, where you can get information almost on demand. Since COVID and pandemic, we have been providing a very high volume of information to our families, if not on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. And this would help the project management of that, and also allow us to respond much quicker in a more timely fashion. So moving forward, with our decisions coming up around the third quarter and beyond, this is going to be one of those tools that we were going to rely very heavily on to answer family questions as it relates to those decisions. A good example will be our post-referendum information that we will be putting out, where families can ask questions again on questions relative to the referendum. So all of these issues that have a high volume of questions, that we're able to manage those and respond in a timely fashion, and also in an interactive form, almost information on demand.
Thank you so much.
All right, any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
All right, I move that the Board of Education purchase a 2-year subscription for the Let's Talk platform from K-12 Insight at an annual cost of $75,600, totaling $151,200 for the period of January 1st, 2021 through July 2022, using the 2020-21 and 2021-22 district-wide technology software services budget. Julia, your advisory vote?
Aye.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, that completes our consent agenda. We're going to move on to other reports. To the board, the City of Madison Education Committee.
We still have not met. We have a meeting scheduled for tentatively for January 6th.
Great, thank you. Student Senate, Julia?
Yeah, Student Senate has met once since this month, and we had a guest presentation about youth homelessness and MMSD, and we're going to be exploring ways to involve our group in that issue. And we'll be meeting again tomorrow and continuing committee work.
Great, thank you, Julia. Next, MSCR?
Yes, we meet this Wednesday from 5 to 8. Our last meeting was in October, and we're looking forward to good post-referendum discussion and future plans.
Great, thank you, Nikki. Safety and Security Ad Hoc Committee, Savion?
Yep. So we concluded our Safety and Security Ad Hoc Committee last week, Thursday. We approved 16 total recommendations to be forwarded to the board. We will receive those in January, and then we will discuss them in full in February. A few of the highlights include starting a 3 to 5 year holistic implementation plan for restorative justice throughout the whole district, K to 12. At least one full-time school-based RJ position for each of the high schools, and investigating the link between school safety and classroom engagement. And finally, the creation of a superintendent's advisory committee to provide feedback on day-to-day and implementation of these recommendations, and to provide further recommendations if necessary.
Yeah, thank you, Savion. The advisory committee came up because a lot of our conversations throughout the time that we met was really about, it was at the day-to-day operations And it really was not in our sort of responsibility as a subcommittee of the board to get to the executive side of implementation of restorative justice and other things. So we did get as much done as we could during this time frame to consider that we develop and propose these recommendations to the full board just in time for our budget conversations coming up in January and February. All right, ad hoc committee for the Falk Elementary School. Anybody is there any update for that?
They are meeting on December 28th and again on January 4th to look at one last proposal that came in. And then they will hold a public hearing on the 4th of January on their recommendation. They will then come to the board instruction work group and the regular meeting in January for a final vote.
Great, thank you, Barb. The voice from above, as Ananda says. Okay, next is the Wisconsin Association, or other business is the Wisconsin Association of School Boards 2021 resolutions. As you know, these resolutions come before us every year around this time to prepare us for our vote at the annual convention that comes up in January. And so I just need you all to have reviewed these resolutions and let me know how you want me to vote on the resolutions. Nikki?
I'd like to, if possible, speak on the special ed resolution.
Sure, and I just want to just make sure, I'm sorry, Nikki, before you go.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sure that these are the Wisconsin Association of School Board resolutions. They are not MMSD resolutions as it was shared broadly on social media. This was a WASB resolutions. And so I'm thankful that, we're going to have these conversations because I really do need some direction and guidance around how we vote on the Wisconsin Association of School Board resolutions. Just want to make sure we clarify that they're not MMSD resolutions. Go ahead, Nikki.
I'm glad for the clarification. What part I saw on social media specifically said WASB.
Okay.
I don't know if something else got lost in translation, but that was what I saw. But the reason I'm speaking out on the special ed and the maintenance of effort is for two major reasons. Maintenance of effort is the requirement that school districts have to spend the same amount each year and keep the spending the same. If they don't spend the money, they lose it. If they go over the amount, they have to stick to the new amount. The problem being with changing it and suggesting that legislation is that Congress has already stated that they will not consider it, and that resolution would basically be meaningless because it would violate federal law 300.48 and the right to have a free, appropriate public education. And it would basically allow the amount of special education budget to be determined school district to school district. One of the key points of IDEA and federal disability law is that cost cannot be used to determine services except in incredibly extreme cases. This would mean that those with the most severe disabilities, in often case, marginalized groups, including Native Americans, African Americans, Latinx, and those with cognitive disorders will most likely be affected because you will pit individual kid against kid based on services solely on the basis of cost. That was the whole point of IDEA, was that cost not be a factor when it was created in 1975, because every child deserved a free, appropriate public education. We end up voting to support this, we could end up not only supporting something that our name would be on something that suggests violating federal law, which any bill would do. But two, it says that we don't have our commitment to special ed, that we're okay with relaxing the rights in a pandemic. Once you relax the rights of any marginalized group, you don't get them back. And that's what I'm terrified, the precedent that will be set. So that's why I come out as strongly as I do.
So you are guiding me, Nikki, to vote to abstain in this vote, or to
vote against.
Vote against it. Any other comments on that, Savion?
Yeah, I just want to echo Nikki's concerns, and thank you so much for bringing this to our attention and providing your expertise, Nikki. I guess I just have a process question with this. Is it like the consent agenda where we ask to pull out resolution 2106, I believe it is? And then in terms of giving you direction to vote for all the others, but vote against this one? Or how does this work out process?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we'll do is we'll pull out 21. It's 21.0, 21-05, it looks like, right? Or no, is it 06?
I thought it was 06.
It's 05.
It's 05.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yep. So as soon as yeah. So just we'll pull it out before we vote on the other resolutions, and then we'll vote on this one. Did you have anything else, Adrian? Okay, good. Ali?
Nikki, I greatly appreciate your enhancing our understanding of this, especially given kind of the large picture. I am curious if there's anybody who'd be prepared to speak to the implications around this for MMSD specifically.
Thank you, Ali.
I think John would be the only one who would.
I don't think we have John on here right now. So Sherry, you want to defer to John? And if not, then we can get back, talk about more of the implications for it from the legal standpoint. But I will tell you, just listening to it and understanding it, the one point that Nikki made that I would wholeheartedly agree with, once you lessen any standard for a marginalized population, and in particular, I've always supervised special ed, then it is so difficult to get that overturned to go back to it. So I wholeheartedly would agree with that piece, but I will still get a response from John for you guys for it. But just coming directly from me, having supervised special needs, once you lower it, you don't get it back.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify, I'm not asking because I think, one way or another that would determine how we vote on this. I think it's important that we be very well informed in terms of the implications, but overall, I think it's important now and always that we are supportive of all of our students, and that includes our students with disabilities.
Yes.
And so I think especially in this moment when our educators are working so incredibly hard to meet the needs of all of our young people, and when our families are going above and beyond to accommodate the educations of their specific students, anything we do to lessen the integrity of support would not be the right thing to do in this moment. And so again, thank you, Nikki, for raising this. And I agree with your guidance, Gloria.
Great.
I will just point out one thing. This does ask for state and federal flexibility, so I don't want us to operate under the assumption that WASB is asking us to do something that would violate federal law. They're asking for both.
Right. Yep.
Thank you so much for that clarification, Sherry.
Ananda?
Do we have to vote on this tonight? Sherry, do you know? I had a different interpretation by reading this. I'm now concerned that I do want to learn a little bit more, and I do want to hear what's the impact for us. So I don't feel comfortable on voting on this tonight if we don't have to.
Okay.
Gloria, when is your meeting?
It's mid-January. So, I mean, I think, we, so all I need from these resolutions is guidance on how to vote. And so, as I said, these are WASB resolutions. They're asking, as Sherry said, is for us to, is for WASB to look for, to reduce the requirements imposed by school districts in federal funding. And so it doesn't really impact us directly as much. I'm glad that we are going
We're
to.
talking about that thing right now.
Oh, Barb, you're not on mute. So, I mean, I don't think it's going to impact us directly. All I need to know, and it sounds like from the board, from what I hear, is that we have enough people to say that they have concerns about this, and I just need some guidance on it. I have concerns about it as well. I think that I should go into this meeting, WASB, and vote no to this resolution. I don't want us to go back. I think I am in agreement with Nikki, even though that it's sort of, they're going to be asking for this legislation to grant state and federal flexibility. And so I just don't want our MMSD name on it when they go and they request for this flexibility on this very issue. And so I think we should vote on it and stand, strong against asking, for this flexibility on this very issue. And so that's what my recommendation would be, is for us to move forward. I mean, I think most of us, I think the majority of our board members here today feel the same. I think we should just go ahead and vote on it. And I strongly believe that other school districts are going to have an issue too. And so we'll have a thorough conversation about it, and I can come back and report back to the full board on what the conversation was and where we went, because I don't think we're going to be the only school district that's going to vote no on this.
I saw Julia's hand up, actually.
Julia, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question. So you're voting on these individually, right? The different resolutions, or do you have to do
No, generally, I mean, in the past, from my experience, we haven't really had an issue on specific resolutions. We actually voted on all of them, and pretty much saying that you're giving me direction to vote in support of the resolutions. And then, obviously with this one, what we'll do is we'll separate this one and we'll vote on all the other ones, and vote no for this one, right? You're pretty much essentially just giving me some guidance on what you want me to vote.
Okay, then on specific ones, I had a couple of questions, I guess.
Sure. Are you on other ones?
Yeah, on
Okay,
2109.
Okay.
It looks like they're advocating for.
Let's finish this one, Julia, and then we'll move on. Okay, so let's, so are we done with the conversation on this one?
I just wanted to state, again, I'm confused with the interpretation of the language. I not saying that, Nikki, that you're not right. I just needed some more clarification on the language that they're using, because there are some pieces that are contradicting. The way I interpret it is that they want a flexibility to use the funding that were allocated for something else, or for transportation, for example, to create flexibility around services, which is something that I know has been extremely challenging across the state. Dr. Jenkins?
Given that there is some fusion from any one of you, let me go back and ask John. She's not going into mid-January, and then I can get back with you, and then you have the guidance from John, who's definitely all over this, okay?
And I can send you some stuff as well, Ananda.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nikki.
I would have preferred to have vote on it tonight because of the holidays. I think, I'm just looking at the calendar. When we
Can we vote on the instruction work group?
Let's see.
Look at me adding.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
If you want to vote, you could probably do it at the special meeting on January 11th.
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
The voice from God.
Yeah.
Illuminate.
Okay. All right, so we'll wait on that. Julia, you want 2109?
Yeah, 2109 and also 2101.
Okay. Okay, let's start with 2109.
Sure. So that one, it looked like it was advocating, so it's talking about school safety legislation, and it looked like it included hiring SROs. So I was just wondering if that went against the district's decision to terminate them this summer.
Hold on, let me bring that up. I lost it. Okay. $2109. Okay. So this is again, the Wisconsin Association of School Boards supports a comprehensive school safety legislation, security improvements, hiring SROs, coordinating with community agencies, mental health services, allowing prosecutors to bring appropriate charges against individuals who conveys or threatens. I think with this resolution, it's just they're saying that they support a comprehensive school safety legislation. That does not mean that they dictate our decision to remove SROs. Like, just because we are going to support this and say yes, does not mean that we're going to come back and bring in SROs. We've already made that decision. But all this other stuff is really aligned with what we've been working on.
Yeah, and the other 5 look great. I don't know, it seems kind of weird to kind of condone that when it was kind of made a big point of to not do that summer.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, it covers all Wisconsin school districts, and so school districts still have their SROs in their schools. So yeah, I mean, what I can do is I can bring it up when we are having that conversation at the convention and let them know. I can, ask that they remove that language. It will probably not pass, but if that is the guidance that you all are giving me, in that, I will request that we remove the hiring of SROs from this, and then they vote. But then you're also giving me the guidance to go ahead and support it. I mean, these are WASB resolutions, right? I mean, if you tell me no, I can vote no completely, right? I mean, it's like, it doesn't really impact us. I mean, we govern ourselves. So, I mean, like the mascot, right, was critical because the mascot one, right? I mean, that is something that has failed every year. And we as a school district and other school districts across the state have voted to support it, and it keeps on failing. But these are, these are just the Wisconsin Association of School Board resolutions and what they will advocate for at the state level. And yeah, of course, our MMSD name will be on it when they are advocating for something. And so if you want me to say no to this, I can say no.
Right, can I just comment really quick? I guess when I read it differently. I read it as a menu of options that schools might have to support safety and security in their district, and not as something that everyone has to include. So I don't know if other people read it that way, but I read it as a menu of options.
That's how I read it.
I read it.
Thank you, Gloria. And thank you, Julia, for bringing that up. But if you are committed to defunding police and police structure, you don't want to give opportunities for that. And they might have conflated all of them in order to not create disruption. So I'll definitely would like to seek some advice on like how to either create some language that says like, we would support that, but you need to change the language. To separate or create 2 separate resolutions on how you want the money to be spent.
Okay, okay, you guys, I think what I will do is, since there are some questions and some concerns about more than one resolution here, take a look at them, read them, send your concerns ahead of the January meeting, special meeting, and let's vote there. So I've never had this issue before, but I mean, I guess let's do it in January. But then let's just move on. But you have to read through these resolutions, get your questions answered as much as you can, send them to Dr. McGregory so that he can get your questions answered before the January meeting, and we will vote on these resolutions. And what they are is just you're giving me guidance on how to vote on these resolutions at the state convention, and we will vote. We may not have consensus, we will vote in the majority. I will vote, I will, go with what the majority of the board member wants. Okay, Ali?
Yeah, I want to thank you so much, Julia, for bringing this to our attention and speaking to kind of, the larger points that we as a district have been trying to make. I think looking to school safety is an area that is of great importance, and looking to disproportionality and discipline is an area of great importance, especially as, as Dr. Jenkins continues to ask us, are we an anti-racist district? And so really looking at what the history of SROs in schools has created is something I think that we have to be willing to examine and speak to. I also think that I listened to Savian speak earlier to recommendations. And I think that some of the really important work we're doing in terms of, progressing the conversation around school safety could be added to the language at WASB. So Gloria, I'm curious about the ability to amend, and I appreciate the time to continue the conversation.
Savian?
Yeah, thank you for that, Ali. And, as we continue to discuss our participation in WASB, would be interested to see how we can push WASB to be further anti-racist, because as you mentioned before, with the failure of the resolution and banning offensive mascots, I feel like we have a role to play in pushing WASB to be anti-racist. Yeah.
Okay, I don't understand. I mean, okay, I get it. I totally get it, you guys. I mean, the safety and security, but we do have to support safety and security in our schools. This is not an SRO conversation. It is part of the menu of options that are here for the state of Wisconsin and not MMSD. And so give it some thought. We will talk about it, and then just be prepared to vote on in the January meeting. 2101 is the other one that Julia pulled out. Julia, do you just want to comment on your concerns of that one?
Yeah, this one just seemed kind of weird to me. It's promoting imposing a 1% sales tax, which is not super progressive. That's not a great tax. I mean, obviously greater school funding would be great, but on the other hand, that kind of funding has a pretty unequal and significant burden on families that can't afford it. So I would maybe encourage everyone to look at that one also before the next meeting.
Great. Thank you, Julia. Good point. Ananda?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I had my hand up before we moved from the 2109. I think what is important around our language and how we use our language is because when we started having SRO programs way back, schools were calling DPI to get guidance on that. So what DPI did is created a website that called Safety and Security, and the only resource in there was SROs. So there was this sort of assumption that DPI was endorsing SROs, which was not the case. We don't endorse, as a state, don't endorse programs, but it's seen that way because of the way people are talking. So this, even though this might have been a legit, here's the menu of option. The fact that they mention creates an implication that is the only option for safety and security, which is, I don't think that that's what it intended to, but that's what we're reading, or that could be read it. And to your point, Gloria, about like this is getting like really nitty gritty into it. I think part of it's because there's some language in there that, depending on how you're reading it, you could misinterpret it. So it would be always, I would appreciate if someone can speak to them, or if there was a number that we could call to talk to one of the WASB staff, so we can hear from them, like, what did you mean by this policy? Because there is some gray area in there, and it is critical. This is we are making recommendations for all the school boards for all the state of Wisconsin. So I really appreciate Julia and Nikki bringing those things up.
I appreciate you guys listening. It's something I'm passionate on.
I mean, I think that the way this functions and has functioned since I've been on the board is that these conversations happen on the floor at WASB convention. And it's unfortunate that we're not all there to have this conversation, right? But, and so that's what so your concerns about this menu of options and the SROs having them being on there, that's a conversation that will happen on the floor. And then you guys are just giving me the authority to vote on these resolutions one way or another. And so, but it's not saying we're going to bring back SROs, right? It's saying exactly what it says, that allows districts to enhance safety and security by supporting one-time and ongoing costs, including but not limited to security improvements to infrastructure, which we're doing, hiring SROs, which we're not, coordinating with community agencies, which we are, training for staff and students about threats to safety, restorative practices, de-escalation techniques, and anti-bullying, which we are, mental health services, we are, equipping schools with crisis teams, which we are, right? I mean, so it's just, I don't want us to get hung up by this one thing that they don't have, WASB does not have the authority to dictate what we do. And so if you want me to take it out and advocate for taking it out, then I can do that. If you want me to have them take it out, and if they say no, and you tell me to vote no if they don't take it out, then that's what I'll do. It's really not this complicated, where we don't have to have an SRO conversation again. And so that's all I'm saying. It's really, but thank you for bringing up these concerns. I do appreciate it. Just please review the resolution so that we can get it voted, and I can get some guidance from you all on how you want me to vote.
Thank you so much, President Reyes, for taking this on and your patience as we're having this long conversation about resolutions that may or may not impact us. I really appreciate you.
Yeah,
non-binding.
Non-binding resolutions, that's the worst.
Right.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Julia. Appreciate your leadership. I see you.
No, I get it. I just think it's a weird public statement of values if that's the only thing it is. But yeah, I appreciate it.
Okay, so next, so we're not going to vote on this. We'll wait. And so move on to the next one, purchase of 501 East Badger Road. I move that the Board of Education exercise the September 2020 agreed to terms to purchase property located at 501 East Badger Rock Road at the agreed upon price of $6,400,000 for continued use as a MMSD middle school and future use of a new elementary school with funding from the approved November 2nd, 2020 facility referenda. Second, who is that?
Ali Muldrow.
Ali, second. Nanda, did you have?
Oh, I was seconding too. I second the second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, Julia, did you have Something,
Just a technicality, but there's actually a typo in the motion you just read. It's not East Badger Rock Road, it's East Badger Road.
oh yeah, I don't know why I read that to East Badger.
It's actually written in there, so it's a typo, so.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, Julia, your advisory vote?
Aye.
Aye. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. And we don't have any old and new business, it looks like, so can I get a motion to adjourn?
So
Motion
moved.
to
So
adjourn.
moved.
So moved, Ali. Second, Ananda?
Second.
Savion, second. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Good night, everybody. Thank
Night.
you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.